I am currently engaged in a soliloquy regarding my predicament. I initiated the dissolution of my marriage due to my wife's infidelity. I have been divorced for approximately 1 year, and I do not have any children or immediate family members residing in the vicinity. I am disclosing this information because I am seeking to become involved with another man's spouse. I am uncertain as to whether my motivation stems from romantic love, sexual desire, infatuation, or a combination of these factors. I am aware that revenge is a factor in this situation. I have only recently become acquainted with this woman. I often encounter her when I go for lunch. She is employed in the same building as me. I have made an effort to ascertain as much information about her as possible. My intention is to pursue a relationship with her. However, I am uncertain about the subsequent course of action. In some ways, the intense desire for a romantic involvement is a troubling emotion. I am driven by a powerful desire to possess her, to the extent that I would be willing to take her by force if necessary. Thus far, I have ascertained that she is approximately 30 years of age, of a slight build, and possesses breasts that protrude from beneath her blouse, devoid of any bra. She favors miniskirts or tight pants, and her attire is consistently crease-free, suggesting the use of either a thong or another form of undergarment. It is evident that she is married to an unfulfilled individual. She has no children and is somewhat promiscuous. Her husband is similarly lacking in fulfillment because he is unaware of the value he possesses and is willing to risk losing her. The most troubling aspect of his character is that he was the cause of my failed marriage. He engaged in an affair with my wife, and now I will exact retribution upon him. If I were to take her and have sex with her, I would be doing her a favor. I realize that this is not a rational or conventional response, but I have been this way ever since I caught my wife cheating. One day, I came home from work early and just walked into my house. I did not really pay attention to anything or anyone. I did not pay much attention to anything and simply proceeded to change my clothes in the privacy of my bedroom. There, in the midst of the bed, I discovered my wife in a state of undress, engaged in sexual intercourse with another man. Upon seeing me, she let out a scream, and the other man, who seemed to be approaching the peak of pleasure, appeared to believe that he had performed well. Upon seizing him by the shoulders and forcibly dislodging him from my unfaithful wife, I proceeded to subdue him by throwing him to the floor. My wife, in her state of distress, continued to vocalize her anguish. I then proceeded to inflict significant physical harm upon the unfortunate individual, rendering him incapacitated. When he attempted to rise, I forcibly restrained him and transported him to the door, where I proceeded to eject him in a state of undress. I then proceeded to expel his wallet and vehicle keys onto the grass, but not his clothing. He then rose to his feet, made his way to his vehicle, and departed, leaving behind a trail of blood. I did not see nor hear from him again until a fortuitous turn of events led me to revisit the bedroom where my unfortunate wife was hastily preparing to leave. She was visibly distressed. "Kevin, this is not what it appeared to be. Let us discuss this matter further. We can ascertain the truth, not what it seemed to be." I stated that it appeared you had engaged in sexual intercourse with the individual in our bed. Did you indeed engage in sexual intercourse with him, or did you not? "Please, Kevin, allow me to elucidate." I interrupted her. "Either you engaged in sexual intercourse with him, or you did not. What is this?" "This is the question is relatively straightforward, I merely requested an answer." After a brief interval, I stated that, given the difficulty he was experiencing in answering, our discussion was at an end. I was going to dine, and he was given 1 hour to take whatever he wished and cease all contact with me. Should he still be present when I returned, I would resort to physical violence. I then informed him that I was going to throw him out, and that he had 1 hour to leave. I proceeded to leave the room, and waited 2 hours before returning. I hoped that she would leave him, as I am a man of my word and would not go back on my promise to do so. When I returned home, she had departed, as had the majority of her personal belongings. I was not inclined to read the note she had left, but I reconsidered and did so. It was from Rachel. It read, "Dear Kevin, I made a mistake. A significant one. Jim is irrelevant to me. He was merely an old school acquaintance I encountered by chance. We were lovers. In our formative years at school, it was evident that I was not a virgin. By the time we got married, Jim was my first love. Our relationship developed organically, and old memories linger. I encountered Jim at the mall, where we had a pleasant reunion. He initiated flirtatious behavior, and I found myself reminiscing about our shared history. He inquired about my place of residence and accompanied me on foot to my residence. I should have exercised greater discernment, but I erred in judgment when we arrived at the house. I showed him around, and upon reaching the bedroom, he embraced me and kissed me. It appeared as though we were reliving past experiences, and then he initiated physical contact. We embraced in a manner similar to our previous interactions, and then he proceeded to engage in sexual intercourse with me. I regret the occurrence of this event, yet it did occur. I am sorry for the pain I have caused you. I ask for your forgiveness and a chance to be a good wife and avoid infidelity in the future. I have always loved you, Kevin. I still love you, Rachel. The note caused me additional distress. The individual in question had a name. I loved my wife, but I am one of those psychologists who believes that love can be lost. In my case, it was completely lost. It was replaced by a desire for revenge. Revenge is not necessarily a desired outcome, it is something that must be done. I would have had mine the next day. I canceled my work schedule because I had to switch our checking and savings accounts. I called most credit card companies and canceled. Subsequently, I retained the 2 accounts in my name, solely for the purpose of covering any potential expenses that might arise. I am a tenacious individual, and I am not afraid to admit it. That is simply my nature. Rachel's father contacted me to inquire about the nature of the conflict between me and his daughter. I became visibly upset and responded, "What on earth is going on? Don't you have any idea? It would have been more prudent to inquire of your own daughter about the situation. I discovered that your daughter, whom you hold in high regard, was engaging in sexual intercourse with one of her friends in our bed. I am not one to forgive, so I promptly removed her from the premises. She had the opportunity to take everything she desired, and I will not provide her with further financial assistance if she decides to pursue legal action. I am not inclined to engage in a lengthy discussion about the minutiae of her life. Otherwise, I would prefer to be left alone." 2 days later, Karen, Rachel's younger sister, called to request a brief conversation. I informed her that I was not interested in hearing her excuses and that I would not engage in any further discussion. I am indifferent to Rachel's expressions of remorse. Is there anything else you wish to convey? If you utter Rachel's name again, I will terminate the call. Karen inquired if there were any other personal items remaining in the house that belonged to her sister. I informed her that her sister had an hour to collect whatever she desired. She could take whatever she wanted with her if she forgot something. It was too unfortunate a circumstance. Karen mentioned a few things, and I began to feel irritated once more. Therefore, I responded in the only way I knew how. "Karen, I will tell you what. You should come here and give yourself to me on my bed. Then I will allow you to take whatever you desire." "Precious sister," she screamed back, "you pathetic son of a ___. How dare you talk to me like that? Wait until I tell my husband and you can deal with him. Does this mean I won't have a chance to ___ you? I always thought that you would be very good at making love." Well, then, this pitiful semblance of a husband came along. I was not intimidated by this individual, who exhibited a friendly demeanor towards his wife. I did not anticipate ever seeing him at my door. I heard someone in the background speaking on the phone. I recognized the voice as Rachel's. It appeared that Karen had handed her the phone, as I only heard Kevin say, "You son of a ___," before the call ended. I contacted my lawyer and requested that he complete the requisite paperwork without providing Rachel with any information. We leased a residence, and each of us had access to our own vehicle. Otherwise, I simply maintained separate savings accounts. Rachel did not experience any difficulties with the dissolution of the marriage. I made it clear that I would not communicate with any member of the family except Karen, and then only under the following circumstances. She acquiesced to my demands. I was a formidable adversary to overcome. Karen was an attractive woman. She was slightly more attractive than her sister, Rachel. Both women were attractive, but Karen was several years younger and probably had less experience in romantic relationships, given her husband's lack of strength. I was preparing to move out of the house and finalize the divorce. The divorce was already final. I contacted Karen via telephone and inquired if she would be interested in retrieving a few of her sister's personal belongings that I was relocating to an apartment and did not wish to carry with me. Had she not come and retrieved them, I would have simply discarded them. She promptly responded in the affirmative, indicating her intention to come and collect. I informed her that evening that she was to either come alone or bring her husband, who was, in my estimation, a rather pathetic specimen. Had Rachel been present at my residence when Karen arrived, she would have been alone. I inquired about her husband, but she stated that he was otherwise engaged. I was aware that the truth was otherwise. I surmised that he was afraid and that she was aware that I intended to take her. Upon entering the house, we proceeded to the bedroom where I had gathered her sister's belongings. She reached for one of the boxes, and I instructed her to wait a moment, informing her that the item had not yet been paid for. In response, she looked at me and stated, "You can't be serious." She then made it clear that she was not interested in engaging in sexual intercourse. "To you," I laughed. "This is not love, it is merely uninhibited sexual intercourse. You have been contemplating this for an extended period." I then seized her as she struck my chest. I stated, "Come on, Karen. You are not deceiving anyone. It is merely you and me." I then kissed her. I placed my hand down her leg, beneath her skirt, and then moved it back up her thighs. She was not wearing any undergarments. She removed her hands from my neck, and I pushed her onto the bed. I then asked her what she wanted. I asked her to tell me that she wanted me to take her. I asked her to say that she wanted me to take her. I asked her to take me. I asked her to take Kevin. I asked her to take possession of me. I asked her to please put on protection. I asked her to please take Kevin. I asked her to put Kevin at her disposal. I asked her to be available. I asked her to be like the other girl. Your sister. I will take possession of you, but without any protection. You will receive the full load. Well, Karen, what will it be? By this time, she was feeling hot. I took control of her, then simply zipped up my pants and looked at her. I walked over, grabbed a couple of boxes of her sister's things, and headed out. Upon returning to her vehicle, she began to verbally abuse me. She accused me of using her for my own gratification and expressed her displeasure at my lack of emotion and consideration. She inquired about the whereabouts of Kevin, who had previously been present, and expressed her belief that he had died. She then made a comparison between her situation and my actions towards her husband, suggesting that I had caused him to become a weak and ineffectual individual. You have achieved your objective, just as your sister did. Remove her belongings from my residence and depart immediately. Do not fail to inform your husband of your infidelity when you return home. He may be sufficiently weak-willed to remain with you. Furthermore, I have no desire to interact with you further. I find a spouse who engages in infidelity intolerable. She demanded that I take all of her belongings, leaving no reason for me to return. She had previously referred to me as a bastard and proceeded to grab the last box of her belongings and leave my house. While she was adept at sexual intercourse, I was aware that I only desired her for the purpose of taking revenge on her sister. I was certain that sexual gratification could never replace the love I had lost. However, the situation seemed to be intensifying. You are preoccupied with seeking retribution and exacting punishment upon those who have wronged you. This was my objective as well. Despite my awareness that this would not address my underlying issues, I felt compelled to pursue it, regardless of whether it was justified. I encountered a young woman named Carly, who was petite and attractive. On a daily basis, one may experience a persistent desire or sensation that is difficult to shake. This was my sentiment when I encountered this particular individual on a near-daily basis. She would visit the restaurant accompanied by her female companions, who appeared to be in high spirits and seemed to be leading fulfilling lives. One of the individuals she dined with was Mara, with whom I had been acquainted for an extended period. We were acquaintances, not close friends. Our interactions were perfunctory, akin to greeting each other with a casual "Hi, Mara. How are you today?" Marcia was aware of my divorce, as it had become a topic of discussion in our small community. One day, when Marcia came into the restaurant alone during lunch, I invited her to have lunch with me. I was eager to speak with her. I informed her that it was merely a social engagement and that I was weary of dining alone. We conversed about her family and the well-being of her children. She discussed her husband's promotion and other general topics. She inquired about my life and the circumstances surrounding my divorce. These details were widely known. Rachel was unfaithful to me, but no one ever discovered with whom. If anyone ever had the courage to inquire, I simply replied that I was unaware of the identity of the other party and that it was of no consequence. I inquired about the new employee in their office and was informed that her name was Carly. She and her husband, Jim, relocated to this area approximately 1 year ago. I experienced a sense of unease. Mara observed my demeanor and posited that Carly was a happily married woman, suggesting that there was no basis for me to engage in flirtation. From the outset of my divorce, I had cultivated a reputation for being a formidable individual. I informed Mara that I found Carly to be an attractive woman and inquired about her marital status. Mara proceeded to provide me with further information. I sought further information about Jim. I then had to ascertain whether he was who I believed him to be. If he was, I was determined to engage in sexual intercourse with Carly. I was ashamed of my actions, but I was unable to control them. One day during lunch, I was sitting in a corner booth with my friend, having lunch. He inquired about my personal life. He was more knowledgeable about the matter, so we conversed amicably over lunch. Carly and her husband entered the restaurant. He was the son of a prominent figure. I was caught off guard by this coincidence. I was overcome with a desire to confront him again, but I maintained my composure. He did not recognize me because he only observed me for a brief period. While I was physically assaulting him, I recognized him and decided to do the same to his wife as he did to mine. One day, when Carly was alone in a restaurant, I initiated a conversation with her. I introduced myself and mentioned that I was friends with Marcia. My intention was to calm her down. She smiled and I introduced myself and inquired as to whether she would prefer to sit at the same table. She appeared somewhat apprehensive until I informed her that she would be responsible for paying for her own lunch. This prompted a brief, amused response as we took our seats. She then proceeded to provide a detailed account of herself and made a point of noting that her husband, Jim, had recently transferred to this location. Over a year ago, she stated that they had a rather rough start here. Her husband was attacked by 2 men and robbed of all his possessions. He required emergency medical treatment and received stitches above his left eye. She said he was in a terrible state when he returned home. She also mentioned that he filed a police report. However, the description provided was insufficient, and the perpetrators were never apprehended. This may have been the reason why he did not report the incident to the police after dinner. I informed her that it was a pleasure to meet her and that I had no objections to her continuing to sit at the same table. However, I am now confronted with a dilemma. I developed a liking for Carly. I found her attractive and desired retribution, yet I was reluctant to cause her harm. I needed time to consider my options. I saw her almost daily, often accompanied by other women from her office. She consistently regarded me with interest and smiled. One day, I informed her that I would commence lunch an hour later than usual. It seemed unlikely that I would have the opportunity to have lunch with her again. However, the following day, she arrived at the restaurant an hour late and was alone. She approached my table and asked to join me, and I accepted. We began having lunch together almost every day. Our relationship progressed to the point where we became close friends. I developed strong feelings for her. One day, I stood up and informed her that I considered her to be one of the most beautiful and kind women I had ever met. If she were not married, I would ask her out. She became visibly nervous and replied, "But I'm married. Kevin, I may not have the best marriage, but I would never cheat on my husband. I can't." This is I was compelled to inquire about the veracity of her assertion. What, precisely, was the nature of the problem in her marriage? Her eyes brimmed with tears, and she confided that she believed her husband was unfaithful, though she was uncertain. I grasped her hand and held it for a moment, attempting to reassure her. She trembled, and I strove to calm her. I was perplexed by the nature of her predicament. One might be forgiven for questioning whether he would turn down a woman as wonderful as this merely for the sake of sexual intercourse with anyone. However, this line of thought was soon replaced by another, more sinister possibility: was he back with Rachel again? I looked at Carrie and informed her that I needed to speak with her about something of great importance, but that I was unable to do so there and then. I therefore requested that she meet me after work, stating that it was of the utmost importance that I speak with her in private. It was imperative that she trust me enough to come to my house, where we could engage in a private conversation. "Kevin, I am unable to go to your apartment. What would it convey to others? I just thought about Rachel for a moment. Why could she not be like that? I must tell you something. I believe you can trust me. Kevin, I like you, but I don't know you well enough to be alone with you in your apartment. Can we meet here and talk? Either in the car or in a restaurant would be fine. Okay, Carly, let's meet here after work. I'll even treat you to dinner. The invitation to dinner indicated the importance of the matter at hand. She laughed, and I needed to organize my thoughts. What would I say? How would I say this? I did not want to risk alienating Carly. I wanted her for my revenge, but now I also wanted her for myself. Indeed, I was stubborn, and I loved her. I had not anticipated this turn of events. I had intended to take her in front of her husband and then laugh at him. Why did it have to be her? We met for dinner. She informed me that she had spoken with Marcia, who had told her about my divorce and how I had discovered my wife engaging in sexual activity with another man. She had indeed witnessed this. She indicated that it must have been distressing for her to witness this in my own residence. She expressed her profound regret for my situation and conveyed her trepidation at the prospect of discovering similar information about her husband. Carly, there are several personal matters I wish to discuss with you. I am aware that you are, although I am married, I am developing romantic feelings for you, Kevin. I ask that you refrain from commenting further. I am aware that I am a married woman, Carrie. I feel compelled to share this information with you, and I expect you to listen. As I mentioned previously, I am falling in love with you. My inclination to pursue this relationship is shaped by my personality traits. I am a stubborn individual, and my wife's infidelity has contributed to this aspect of my character. I am aware that I have been described as a deceitful individual. However, I am unable to control my tendency to bear a grudge. My wife instilled this trait in me through her infidelity. My initial plan was to seek retribution by identifying her lover's wife and holding her accountable in front of her husband. This would have been a form of revenge. Carly interrupted me. Please, Kevin, you are under no obligation to inform me that this topic is so personal and that discussing it causes you pain. I can discern this from your tone of voice. I ask that you allow me to continue. As I previously stated, I was intending to exact revenge on my wife's lover by raping his wife in front of him. However, I have encountered a significant obstacle. The woman I was intending to take by force, if necessary, was the woman I had fallen in love with. Carrie covered her face with her hands in shock. She was aware that this man was her husband and that the woman I had fallen in love with was her. Tears rolled down Carly's face. I was experiencing difficulty in believing this. How could I know? How could I be so sure? Were you intending to rape me as a means of retribution against my husband? She wept. I attempted to embrace her in an attempt to console her, but she resisted. Please do not touch me at this moment, she implored. I require a brief period of solitude. Carly, approximately 1 year ago, I discovered this man in my bedroom. I proceeded to physically assault him and subsequently expelled him from my residence without any. I was clothed in only my undergarments. I was aware that the man's name was Jim. I then retrieved from my pocket the note that Rachel had left for me. I was uncertain as to why I had saved it, but I did. I then handed it to Carrie, who was in a state of distress, for her to read. She was moved to tears by the contents of the note. I had been monitoring her activities for approximately 6 months, observing her daily visits to the restaurant. I delayed our initial encounter, as you represented a beacon of hope in my otherwise bleak existence. Despite my lack of familiarity with you, I found myself increasingly drawn to you. At the time, I was unaware of your marital status. I refrained from initiating contact due to my personal shortcomings and the fact that I was still contemplating my next move. One day, I sought information about you from Marca. She informed me of your marital status, which initially caused me discomfort. Despite my desire to get to know you better, I was reluctant to act. I attempted to destroy your marriage. The following day, your husband and I met for lunch. That's when I realized who he was. I did everything in my power to avoid another confrontation. If you were any other woman, I would have already assaulted you in front of your husband just for revenge. Carly cried with her hands folded in front of her. I continued, stating that I had fallen in love with you and could not rape the woman I love now. I am in a state of deep confusion. I am motivated to cause your husband pain, but not you. I am interested in having sexual intercourse with you. It has been a significant period of time since I have engaged in sexual activity. The past year has been characterized by a focus on seeking revenge. I believe that your husband has rekindled his relationship with Rachel, who he has known since childhood. She is now divorced. How do you feel about me, Carly? I require this information in order to determine the appropriate course of action. I pledge that, regardless of your feelings towards me, I will not cause you harm. I am unable to do so. I am aware that I am an unscrupulous and vindictive individual. I am also aware that I am quite stubborn. However, I also possess another side of myself that has remained hidden for approximately a year. I would like to present this aspect of my personality to you. I would like the opportunity to demonstrate that I can be a kinder and gentler person when I am in the presence of a woman who I believe is worthy of my affection. I am aware that you are such a woman. I am also aware that I am a good person who has been wronged. I am aware that I have the potential to become a better person. I am aware that I have the potential to become a better man. I am aware that I have the potential to become a better person. I am aware that I have the potential to become a better person. I am aware that I have the potential to become a better person. I am aware that I have the potential to become a better person. I am aware that I have the potential to become a better person. I am aware that I have the potential to become a better person. I am aware that I have the potential to become a better person. I am aware that I have the potential to become. He obstructs her path and requests her assistance in exacting revenge on his wife. He then proposes that they build a happy life together. Kevin's statements elicit a multitude of thoughts and questions. Currently, she is uncertain about her feelings towards him, her husband, and even herself. Before providing answers, she needs time to process everything he has told her. It is important to note that I am not attempting to deceive you or cause you distress. My intention is to provide assistance. It is evident that you are experiencing significant emotional distress, yet I am uncertain as to the precise nature of your difficulties. Following a somewhat disagreeable meal, I accompanied Carly to her vehicle. I expressed my regret for any distress I may have caused and informed her of my intention to communicate with her and address the issues that concern us both. However, I recognize that the present circumstances may not be conducive to such a discussion. I attempted to convey to her my growing feelings for her, but I believe I would have reached a breaking point if I had not expressed them. I simply wanted her to be aware that she allowed me to give her a brief embrace before leaving. Thus far, I have not resolved any issues. In fact, I believe I may have exacerbated the situation. I am uncertain about the appropriateness of disclosing her husband's past. I am unsure of her thoughts and feelings. I hope for a positive outcome. The following day, I was eager to see her at lunch. I needed to ascertain her feelings and thoughts. I proceeded to the restaurant where we typically dined. I awaited her arrival, but she never materialized. I was overcome with concern. Had she engaged in a dispute with her husband? Was he attempting to harm her? If he had done so, I would have taken drastic action. Perhaps she had gone in the opposite direction and informed him about me and my identity. I was at a loss. The performance caused me considerable concern. I was unsure whether I should attempt to contact her via telephone at her residence or simply wait another day. It was challenging for me to conclude my workday. I did everything I could to distract myself from Carly when I returned home. My telephone rang. It was Carly. Her voice indicated distress. "Kevin, I have to see you. I know I shouldn't have contacted you, but circumstances have changed. I want to ensure I see you tonight. Can I come in, please? I was deeply concerned about your well-being, Carly. I experienced considerable distress today due to your absence from lunch. Have you been harmed by that individual? If so, I will seek retribution. I implore you to come immediately. I will await your arrival." Upon answering the doorbell, I was uncertain as to who might be there. When I opened the door, I saw Carly, her demeanor indicating a certain degree of cheerfulness. "To assist me, I sense from your response to the telephone that you were being candid with me. I apologize for this somewhat probing question, but I felt it was necessary." I was delighted to see her and embraced her warmly. I inquired as to why she had not attended lunch that day. She informed me that she had spent the entire evening attempting to organize her thoughts. "My husband, Jim, returned home late. He offered the same excuse he usually does, stating that he had been at work all day. I attempted to be she was not overly affectionate with him, but he was uninterested. He stated that he was tired and was going to bed. I considered the possibility that a man who refuses to have sex with a woman like Carly may be either mentally unstable or brain dead. Carly stated that she waited until Jim went to work that morning and then began investigating. She searched through computer files for hidden files or emails that did not belong to her. Given my familiarity with computers, I was able to utilize the information you provided to track down several files. The contents of these files revealed that she had provided me with a plethora of information, stating that she would explain the details to me so that I would not have to read them. She then proceeded to inform me that, based on the information she had learned about Jim, she had come to the conclusion that she no longer loved him. I am inclined to view him with disdain. I am not pleased with the way he is using me, and I believe this is one of the reasons why I am reluctant to pursue a relationship with you. I grasped her hands and squeezed them. She then said, I am unsure how I feel about you. There is one part of me that cares about you deeply, but another part of me says to be cautious. He is merely using you for his own purposes and then discarding you like a hot potato. Therefore, I am willing to put our relationship on hold for the time being. If you truly care about me as you claim, you will wait until our lives are less tumultuous before attempting to move forward. What will you say when I ask you to do so? I smiled at her and said, this is an opportunity for you to prove your worth. I care about you deeply, and if I begin to move too quickly, please do not hesitate to tell me to slow down. Let us seal our agreement with a kiss before you begin your investigation. She smiled at me with a wide, somewhat foolish smile and said, no, let's begin the process without delay. My husband had applied for this position, having been transferred from his previous role. He informed me that he had requested the transfer, which was the first instance of him providing a falsehood. This was his hometown, where he had spent his formative years. At the time, I did not consider the implications of his decision, assuming that he was like many others who wished to revert to their previous ways. I loved him, so I consented to the move. Approximately 16 months ago, he attended a high school reunion. Have you spoken with your former partner? Were you also in attendance at this event? If so, at what time did you arrive? I was on a family holiday at the time. It was my mother's birthday, so I went there instead. He informed me that old class reunions are typically uneventful. It is worth noting that my wife had a homecoming that same weekend. I had a business trip out of town, so I inquired about her plans. I inquired as to whether she would accompany me, but she indicated that she wished to reconnect with her former classmates. I had not previously considered this possibility. You are indeed a capable private investigator. I am enclosing copies of the emails they exchanged immediately prior to the meeting. While not overtly romantic in nature, they did indicate a mutual expectation of seeing each other. In addition, I have included a couple of emails from the alumni meeting, which were sent shortly after the aforementioned encounter. As you can see, or at the very least, read when you caught them having sex about 4 months later, this was not the first time they had met and had sex. They had been engaging in this behavior for 4 months. I was enraged when this unfaithful individual informed me that it was not what he had intended. One might be forgiven for assuming that the situation would simply resolve itself. However, I had assumed that my revenge on her was over since we were no longer married and that I was only going to take revenge on Jim. However, everything has changed. Carly could see the pain of the meanness in my eyes. I informed Carly that I was not angry with her, but rather, I was experiencing the pain of being cuckolded by my ex-wife. My wife's behavior was particularly irksome at the time. I turned to my wife and informed her that I was in need of a kiss to calm my agitation. I was on the verge of striking a nearby wall if she did not comply. I proceeded to approach the wall and, in a calm and deliberate manner, informed her that I was willing to kiss her. My wife, in a state of heightened distress, approached me and demanded that I fulfill her request. She embraced me and kissed me gently for several seconds. When our lips parted, I gazed into her eyes and slowly pressed my lips to hers once more, with a greater degree of passion. Upon our second separation, she stated, "That is sufficient, Tiger. I am only human, too." We then sat down once more. I expressed my gratitude, and she responded by stating that my actions pleased her. She then suggested that we resume our work, noting that our time together was limited. We both laughed, recalling our shared observation. I provided copies of my husband's phone records from the previous year. These records revealed that the number in question receives calls on a near-daily basis. I contacted the phone company, which confirmed that the number belonged to an individual named Rachel Miller. This was my wife's maiden name. I was unaware that she had taken it back. Additionally, I was previously unaware that she possessed a cell phone. I inquired about the purchase date, and my husband's records indicated that it was purchased on a certain date. Phone records on this number indicate that it was approximately 1 month before he was assaulted by 2 individuals named Kevin. Her smile suggests that she had possession of the phone prior to your apprehension of the perpetrators. This may explain why they evaded justice for so long and why she did not pursue additional compensation during the divorce proceedings. Some of this information may eventually emerge and potentially impact her legal position. Carly, what is your stance on these events? Despite seeking retribution, you remain married to your husband, who has been unfaithful to you. What do you desire from us? I use the plural pronoun we instead of the singular pronoun you. I want to thank him for everything we have. I want to make him regret ever doing this to me. I want to embarrass him in public. How can I do all this without becoming a cheater? I want to save my pride and hopefully yours. Carly, do you think you can live in his house for a couple of weeks without giving anything away? I am confident that I can reside in the house for a couple of weeks without divulging any information that would compromise my position. However, I am reluctant to engage in sexual intercourse with him. Otherwise, I am willing to prepare a meal or two. If he maintains regular contact with his girlfriend, I will be able to cope. Carly, I recommend that you go shopping. We can visit the store during your lunch break if you wish. It is imperative that you utilize joint credit cards in both your names. This will prevent any potential issues that may arise if you solely utilize cards in his name. You have the autonomy to purchase whatever you desire, accumulate significant debt, take a few cash advances, and then deposit the funds into a savings account or invest in bonds and stocks. Kevin, you are a stockbroker. Why don't you invest for me? I did not want you to have any doubts about me. I really care about you, and I want you to trust me. I can invest this money for you if you want. I just want you to know that I don't want any of this. I am here to help you. If at any point she made the decision to engage in sexual intercourse with me, which I perceived as a form of retribution. We had initially agreed that credit cards would serve as our primary financial instrument. As she stood to take her leave, I inquired as to whether I would be receiving any further kisses that evening. She embraced me, opened her mouth slightly, and kissed me. I experienced a sense of nostalgia, reminiscent of my teenage years, and pulled her body closer to mine. She pressed her pelvis against me and then pulled away, uttering, "Damn, you're good. I'll see you tomorrow at lunch." She smiled and entered her vehicle. The following day, instead of our scheduled lunch, we visited several banks, utilizing her joint credit cards. She proceeded to withdraw a substantial amount of cash, which she subsequently advanced as a loan. She was given a month to complete all of her transfers before her credit card bills were due. She was prudent, she did not max out any cards, just in case he used any of them. She did ascertain that he was charging motel room rates twice a week from one of the cards. We conducted our banking for 3 days using 7 different payment cards. I took the checks and deposited all the money for her. I utilized tax-exempt government bonds and other accounts that would have been challenging to withdraw money from. Carly made me transfer the bills into my name so her husband could not obtain any of the money. I did make her co-signer. I designated myself as the primary signer on the bills, thereby preventing me from withdrawing funds without her signature. I suggested that she designate me as the guarantor to provide her with a sense of security, both in light of the investment and my role in it. I began monitoring the latest developments regarding my former partner. I was unable to uncover any significant information and provided Carly with the majority of the information I had gathered about her, which she then exploited. Carly stated that Rachel is currently employed by the same company as her husband. Rachel was one of the company secretaries. Carly leveraged her connections to ascertain where they spent their time when not at work. They became lax in their conduct due to the prolonged nature of their illicit activities. Carly informed her associates to commence taking photographs. Furthermore, I discovered that Carly was held in high regard by her colleagues. Whenever they encountered difficulties with their computers, they sought her guidance. I also learned that she had a profound interest in computers but managed to maintain a professional appearance while assisting others in various offices. The secretaries, when encountering computer-related issues, never felt humiliated or laughed at because Carly always took the time to explain the relevant procedures. They all felt a sense of protection from her. I was unaware of my plan of revenge. How would I execute it? I could not rape Carly, not now, when she was the sole virtuous figure in my life, my former wife. Although my wife has departed from my life, I am not opposed to seeking a modicum of retribution, given the duration of our marriage. The affair had been ongoing for some time prior to our divorce, yet I remained uncertain as to how I could proceed without Carly's assistance. I was unsure if I would have been able to cope with the situation without her support. Carrie informed me that she was unable to engage in sexual intercourse with me at that time, as doing so would have placed her in a similar position to my former wife and her husband, who had been unfaithful to each other. Despite this, she expressed her genuine affection for me. As a married woman, I was compelled to devise a plan of action. I was compelled to consider what I could do to achieve my objective. As I informed you previously, I had maintained my composure and remained stoic for approximately 1 year. I had engaged in rigorous physical training and maintained a high level of fitness. I was compelled to do so. I had numerous acquaintances of questionable character. In fact, they were pimps and prostitutes. I was their investment. The broker and I had a mutually beneficial relationship. We generated significant revenue, and I invested it on their behalf. I engaged in extramarital relationships with numerous women who were not otherwise engaged. Some of these women were kind individuals, while others were less pleasant. Fortunately, I was able to distinguish between them. It was beneficial to have these connections. I was of significant benefit to them. I did not humiliate them, and while I did not agree with their way of life, I recognized their humanity. I contacted one of my pimp colleagues and requested a favor. Upon hearing my explanation, he laughed and said, "You are a terrible person." He was informed that this would have significant financial implications. There are no free lunches in this world. He was told that there would be no problem, but that everything would have to be done correctly. Perhaps this would even be some kind of bonus for him. It was agreed that this would be a good deal. My plan was finally coming to fruition. One evening, Carly and I met to plan our secret operation. She was worried that I might still want to pick her up in public, which she believed would go against everything she believed. She was a special woman with good character. I promised her, and God is my witness, that I would never hurt or embarrass her in any way. Her signature smile, which she used to signal her feelings, was accompanied by the words, "I think I'm really falling in love with you." I informed her that I would be taking the next couple of days off as vacation, sick leave, or maternity leave, and that it was irrelevant which option she chose. The crucial issue was that we only had a couple of days to organize this operation and ensure its success. Everything had to function flawlessly. "Kevin, how are you going to exact revenge without involving me? What do you require from me first? Please refrain from asking so many questions." In the evening, they consistently reserve the same room for approximately 5 hours. The motel is not of the highest quality, but it is nonetheless a rental property. Interestingly, Jim's sexual intercourse with me could have been conducted in a much more economical manner. Tomorrow, I intend to reserve the same room for Wednesday morning. While I am at it, I will set up a remote-controlled VCR. I will also consult with my lawyer, Sally Hawk, who is highly competent. It is imperative that you record this information in order to establish the grounds for your divorce. By Wednesday night, you will be required to obtain Jim's signature on the relevant documentation. What if he refuses to sign? What would you do in that scenario? There is no need to be concerned. Carly, I am reasonably confident that he will sign it. The consequences are too severe to contemplate otherwise. Would you prefer me to divulge the entire plan, or would you prefer to wait and be surprised? Kevin, your enthusiasm is overwhelming. It is affecting my emotional state. The only thing I desire from you is your attention. You are so exceptional that I want you as much as I want this revenge. We will exact revenge, and it will be for both of us. I hope that you feel the same way about me that I feel about you. Then, my revenge will be complete. Are we truly going to completely ruin their lives? Kevin, I am unsure of the moral implications of this plan. My intention is to inflict suffering on them, but I do not want to cause them irreparable harm. Their lives will continue, unless they are foolish enough to refuse to sign your divorce papers. I will now present my plan. They usually meet between 5 and 6, since Jim typically arrives approximately 30 minutes before Rachel. We will focus our attention on him. My associate, Louis, will be accompanying Jim. Sally and Sue are 2 women of loose morals who are currently unemployed due to a severe case of syphilis. I will remunerate them for unprotected sexual intercourse with Jim. Both women are aware that Louis is there to ensure Jim treats them with respect. This is something Jim has been reluctant to do. The next step was to inform Big Louie of the situation. How did he become aware of these individuals? Kevin, I have a professional relationship with them. They generate significant revenue, and I assist them in investing it. When Rachel arrives, she will have a choice. Big Louie will have the opportunity to interact with her. You and I will remain in the vehicle and control the remote. When the optimal moment arises, you will enter the scene and apprehend them. After obtaining the divorce papers, you will proceed to the closet and inform Jim of his options, sign the papers or face the consequences. You will then send a copy of the tape to his employers and the company's home office. Once he has made his choice, you will return to the van, where Big Louie will remain to ensure your safety. Until you leave, Carly, what do you think will happen? Will it work? She smiled at me and said, "You're doing this more for me than for yourself, aren't you? God, you know there's another side to you, and I'm starting to really like it." Over the next 2 days, we prepared everything. Carly met with Sally, our lawyer, who said she wanted to be there. It was evident that she would obtain Jim's signature on the divorce papers. She was renowned as the most prominent divorce lawyer in the state. Sally expressed admiration for the plan and stated that we had provided her with numerous commissions over the years. She was a reliable associate and simply wished to be involved in the proceedings. Big Louis was prepared and we compensated him accordingly. In advance, I informed him that he would receive an additional $500 if everything proceeded according to plan. He simply smiled and stated that it would be no problem. I proceeded to the motel and secured a room for Wednesday afternoon. The receptionist informed me that I was required to vacate the room by 1600 hours, as it had already been rented. I subsequently met up with Carly and we went to lunch at a rather nice restaurant. I was somewhat surprised to see my former sister-in-law there. My sister-in-law, while Law was having lunch with an unidentified male companion, I informed Carly of this development. I was then asked if this would negatively impact our plans. I informed her that the man accompanying Karen was not her husband. Since she was unaware of Carly's presence, we could proceed with our lunch. Upon seeing me, Karen expressed visible distress and appeared taken aback. At the crime scene, I could discern that she was visibly uneasy and was pondering who I was with. Carly exuded a confident and alluring presence, her breasts were partially exposed, she was not wearing a bra, and her skirt was approximately 4 inches above the knee. Carrie swiftly grasped the situation and moved to a position adjacent to me, rather than across from me. Subsequently, she turned my face towards her and kissed me. She invested a considerable degree of physical and emotional intensity into the kiss, which was observed by both Karen and the general public. Carrie then pulled away and smiled, asking whether the kiss had attracted the attention of others. She proceeded to kiss my open mouth once more, but was interrupted by the arrival of the waiter. I observed the waiter making strange noises and inquired about his opinion of the woman in question. He replied affirmatively and added a suggestive remark. When I looked at her, she smiled and said, "Only for you, baby, do I belong." I was uncertain about the sincerity of her statement, but I recognized that she was putting on a show. My ex-wife had a similar tendency. Daughter-in-law, the law would have something to say to Rachel. Karen never came to see us. I was curious as to why Carly and I finished our lunch and proceeded to exit the restaurant. We proceeded to an electronics store and selected the necessary equipment. Upon our departure, she informed me that the kiss in the restaurant was authentic. She stated that she was not joking, although she had performed the act to spite my ex-daughter-in-law. On Wednesday morning, Carly and I were both visibly anxious. Any operation with revenge has the potential to be fraught with tension and requires meticulous planning and precision execution. There is minimal room for error. Carly met with Sally to ensure the divorce papers were in order, while I proceeded to set up the motel room. The video equipment was parked in a conspicuous location outside the building. Carly and I went to visit Big Louie. Upon seeing Carly, he was visibly taken aback, inquiring, "Who is this doll?" I introduced them to each other. Despite her evident nervousness, Big Louis had a tendency to affect people in a profound manner. He was approximately 2 meters tall and weighed approximately 145 kilograms. His complexion was as dark as that of the ace of spades, yet he was a highly intelligent individual. He held a master's degree in business, and his fortune was in the millions. I was privy to this information as I served as his financial broker. She was visibly anxious and informed her that there was no cause for concern. Kevin was a trusted associate, and I would ensure her safety. She appeared reassured and expressed gratitude for his reassurances. Louis stated that he and his associates would arrive at approximately 5 o'clock. The hour was 15. Later that day, Louis wanted to allow Jim a few minutes to clean himself up. Carrie utilized her computer expertise by emailing Jim and Rachel, stating that the note was from someone else. It read, "Honey, I have a special treat for you tonight. Do not ask any questions when you arrive. I know you will be surprised. Just keep going. To make it even more special, let's not communicate for the rest of this day. I want you to remember this night forever. Love, you." At 4:45 p.m. At precisely 5 p.m., Carly and I entered our vehicle and awaited Jim's arrival. We were visibly nervous, as this was a significant undertaking for us. At 5:15 p.m., Jim entered the room. We observed the arrival of Big Louie and Sally and Sue, who entered the room after knocking on the door. At this point, we initiated the recording process, ensuring that we did not begin recording until the action commenced. We utilized 2 cameras, one positioned above the lights and the other inside the fire alarm. The image quality captured by the pinhole camera was remarkable, and I was compelled to retrieve my video cameras the following day. Carly and I experienced a heightened level of anxiety when Big Louie knocked on the door. As he opened the door, we heard. Jim inquired as to the identity of the 2 women who had been brought into the room for the purpose of engaging in sexual activity. Louis explained that he had been compensated for their presence. Jim expressed his dismay at the situation, stating that he was not expecting such company. Louis informed him that the women had been remunerated in advance for their participation in sexual intercourse with the occupants of the room. He also made it clear that they were not a charitable organization and would not be returning any money. He then proceeded to enter the room. Once inside, he instructed his companions to assist Jim in removing his garments. The audio recording reveals Jim to be visibly uneasy, a sentiment that is also discernible on the visual medium. He had assumed that the sexual encounter was a surprise planned by Rachel, given that he had received an email from her earlier that day. Consequently, he proceeded to disrobe. Regarding the women in question, Sally and Sue, only limited information is available. Sally was black, while Sue was white. Despite their approachable demeanor, they were highly proficient in their chosen field. However, they were afflicted with syphilis at the time. The disease is easily transmitted through sexual contact. The girls undressed Jim and began to rub him all over his body. Big Louis sat back in his chair and observed the proceedings. Carly watched the girls through the remote control, experiencing a complex emotional state. She was sad and happy at the same time. She was saddened that her husband, with whom she had lived for 5 years, had cheated on her. At the same time, she was glad that her revenge had begun. There was a knock on the door, and Big Louis opened it. Upon entering the room, Rachel was met by Louis, who instructed her to undress. She was visibly distressed, particularly given the circumstances. She had received an email from Jim, in which he informed her that something special was going to occur that night. However, she was not prepared for the sight of her boyfriend in bed with a black woman. She was unsure of how to react, but Louis reassured her that he had no intention of touching her. He was simply there to ensure the safety of his companions. Sue informed Rachel that they did not have an extended period of time and that she should expedite her disrobing. Uncertain of the appropriate course of action, Rachel began to undress Sue, who was clad only in her undergarments. Sue assisted Rachel in removing Sue's attire. She then guided Rachel to the edge of the bed and stood before her, pressing her body against Rachel. Rachel let out a scream, stating that she had never engaged in sexual intercourse with another woman. She believed that this was Jim's intention for her, leading her to let it happen. The cameras recorded everything, both visually and audibly. Both Jim and Rachel were pleased with the outcome. Once Rachel had recovered from her pleasure, Sally and Sue exited the bed and began to dress. There was a knock on the door of our vehicle. It was Sally Hawk, our lawyer. She inquired about the situation and then viewed the monitor. Jim took Rachel with great fervor, and both transferred their venial disease onto each other. Sally and Sue returned to their vehicle and awaited the arrival of Big Louis. They performed their duties in an exemplary manner. Louis was stationed outside the door to safeguard Carly and Hawk, who was prepared to intervene if necessary. Carly and Sally proceeded to the door simultaneously, with Carly entering the room first. She proceeded to unleash a volley of expletives, including a plethora of profanities and insults. She demanded a divorce and demanded it immediately. Jim and Rachel ceased their activities when they observed Carly at the door, vociferating at them. They were aware that they had been discovered. They were at a loss as to how they could extricate themselves from this situation. Carly continued, "Why, Jim? Why wasn't I good enough for you that you got involved with this woman? I knew you were having an affair. I was hoping that you would put it out of your mind, but no. You continued and continued to do this. I'm over it. I want a divorce and I want it as soon as possible." Then Sally Hawk entered the room. "Jim, this is my lawyer, Sally Hawk. She will inform you of the terms of the divorce decree. I expect to begin divorce proceedings tonight so that I can expeditiously conclude this chapter of my life and facilitate your transition to a new relationship." Jim and Rachel arose from bed and began to dress. They did not have time to shower, so a venial disease was probably beginning to manifest. "I am Sally Hawk. Carly's lawyer has outlined the conditions for divorce. They are straightforward and unambiguous. Carly will vacate the premises that evening and will have 24 hours to pack her belongings. After that period, she will not return. The apartment is in your name, so you will be responsible for all bills that are due before the end of the day. This includes all credit cards that were held jointly by you both. Carly will transfer all joint cards to you tonight. She will not use them again. You will be responsible for any cards that were held solely in your name. You each have your own vehicle. You will be responsible for insuring and maintaining it. Finally, you will each have $88 in your savings account. Credit cards held in your name or jointly by both of you. Carly will transfer all joint cards to you tonight and will never use them again. She will be responsible for any cards in her name. Each of you has your own vehicle and will each be responsible for insuring and paying for your own vehicle as well as for its maintenance. 4. Finally, your savings account with a balance of $88, the sum of $000 will be transferred to Carly's account tomorrow. She will then withdraw the funds. You have a retirement fund with a balance in excess of $8,000. Carly has won the sum of $115. The aforementioned sum of $000 will allow both parties to maintain their individual retirement funds, provided that they agree to the terms set forth. To formalize this agreement, both parties must sign the decree tonight. Once signed, it will be irrevocable, neither party will be able to make any changes. Carly has already signed it, the remaining party must sign it on the line that says husband. Sally handed the document to her husband, who was then asked to read it and sign it. Rachel sat and watched. Jim said, "What if I don't sign this tonight? What are you going to do?" Sally replied, "The document you are holding in your hands will be cancelled in 5 minutes. If you do not comply, we will be forced to take legal action and demand the same benefits, including half of your pension fund. This is a mutually beneficial arrangement. I advise you to accept these terms." Carly proceeded to the closet and retrieved a tape from the VCR. This was a recording of the events that had transpired earlier that day. It would be presented as evidence in the divorce proceedings. "I am not willing to accept these terms," Jim responded. "It is inadvisable to utilize this recording, as it was obtained without consent." Sally began to laugh. "You are indeed a foolish individual. While we will not utilize this recording in your divorce proceedings, we will create copies and forward them to your company and its home office. I am confident that such actions would not be approved by your company." At this point, Jim took a few steps towards them but was stopped by Big Louie. "You did not intend to harm my companions, did you, Jim? I am now compelled to make a decision within 3 minutes. After that, we will depart." Rachel turned to Jim and said almost in a whisper, "Jim, Sally Hawk was my husband's lawyer, and I did not. It is asserted that she is one of the most proficient professionals in the state. It would be prudent to accept this proposal, otherwise, the consequences may be dire. Furthermore, should this recording fall into the hands of those who would misuse it, it could result in significant professional and personal difficulties." Sally regarded Jim for a moment and then added, "We will be free to leave. I will see you in court." Carly then turned to Jim and said, "Wait. I will sign this document, but only if I am provided with the aforementioned audio recording. After Sally and I have departed from this location, you may then provide this recording to the individual in question." Additionally, she provided him with an envelope containing a promised bonus of $500. Sally then reiterated her previous statement, stating, "This document is irrevocable. Should you have any questions, you are required to contact me directly. You are strictly prohibited from disturbing Carly under any circumstances. Otherwise, I will have you arrested and incarcerated." After ensuring that everything was understood, the individual signed the document, and Carly then stated, "I will then provide you with the aforementioned audio recording." A copy of the document was provided to Jim along with the tape and joint credit cards. It should be noted that Carly has 24 hours to remove any items from the apartment that she wishes to retain. The divorce proceedings are classified as a no-fault divorce and must be completed within 2 months. Jim signed the necessary paperwork and was provided with a copy by Sally. Thereafter, both Carly and Sally exited the premises. We subsequently observed Big Louie handing the tape to Jim, who then departed in his vehicle, accompanied by his daughters. Sally returned to the van, displaying a cheerful demeanor. She kissed me briefly, and the atmosphere seemed jubilant until I overheard Sally's subsequent remarks to Kevin. "The dissolution of marriage is now complete. As a result, you will no longer be able to see Carly. It is imperative that we prevent anyone from seeing you and Carly together. As long as you and Carly are not involved, everything should proceed according to plan. We are aware that there have been credit card charges over the past 2 weeks. However, we have the necessary documentation to support our position. Unless someone suspects that Carly is attempting to defraud the banks, we have no reason to believe that there will be any issues. That is why I permitted Jim to take his pension fund. There is sufficient money in that account for the banks to pursue Jim if he attempts to file for bankruptcy. There is also no money in the account in Carly's name. The balance is only $88. I suggest that you simply maintain the account in the same financial institution, but only under your own name. This will help to streamline any potential banking issues. Following the dissolution of the marriage, it is imperative that you and your former spouse refrain from any further financial disagreements. If you so desire, you may resume cohabitation. However, it is ultimately your decision. Kevin, you informed me that your attorney advised you to relocate to another state and establish a brokerage firm for a brief period. I concur with that recommendation. It is recommended that this course of action be taken as soon as possible. Carly will be okay. I will be here to keep an eye on her. It must be acknowledged that, at this time, you are Carly's biggest problem. While I cannot force you to do anything, I strongly advise you to do it." Carly was crying, so I simply hugged her. I was aware that Sally was telling the truth. I realized that I was the only problem, the only weak link in the chain. I kissed Carly goodbye and told her I advised her to contact me after the divorce. I would wait for her. Sally and Carly exited the vehicle. Sally drove Carly home so that she could retrieve whatever she desired from earlier that day. They had hired a moving truck so that Carly could collect whatever she wanted. Sally did state that I could call her if I needed to converse or wanted to ascertain any information about Carly. After the girls departed, I observed the monitor once more and noted that I observed that Jim and Rachel had departed. I returned to the room and retrieved my equipment. I brought a spare copy of the tape, which I kept in case it might be needed in the future. It is curious how no one ever considers the possibility that there might be a second copy, or indeed 2 cameras or 2 recording devices. I packed it all up and left for home. I was happy for Carly and sad for myself. The next day, I spoke to my boss. I discussed with him I was scheduled to travel to Chicago on Friday. I was optimistic that circumstances would align for Carrie. She was a remarkable individual. It appeared that she had exacted a measure of revenge. I was the sole remaining individual in a challenging situation. It was rewarding to assist Carrie, I developed a strong affinity for her. Upon my arrival in Chicago, I immersed myself in my work. We were establishing a new brokerage firm from the ground up. If I was not engaged in work, I was confined to my during the initial 2-week period. I found myself in a state of prolonged solitude, ruminating on the circumstances surrounding Carly. I was compelled to inquire about her well-being. One day, I contacted Sally Hawk, who expressed satisfaction at my communication. She informed me that the anticipated developments were unfolding as expected. Jim had retained legal counsel and was pursuing a contested divorce. His attorney advised him that his approach was misguided and that if he wished to confront Sally, he would need to secure a different legal representation. Jim directed a series of accusations at Carly, asserting that she had orchestrated his predicament. She set him up, but when it came to proof, he had none. Sally said she warned Jim that if he was going to keep accusing Carly of anything, she would sue him. She was fed up with his whining. Sally also informed me that Jim's lawyer mentioned that both Jim and Rachel had contracted syphilis. They had to undergo a course of injections and could not have sex until everything was cleared up. Otherwise, they might get a new strain of communication emerged between them, which brought a smile to my face. Finally, Sally informed me that Carly had relocated to a nearby apartment complex convenient to her place of employment. She relocated approximately half of her belongings from her previous residence to set up her new one. She was advised not to discuss me with anyone, as it was feared that someone might link us. Of course, she was not currently dating anyone, but it had only been a couple of weeks. Sally actually said, when she was talking one-on-one with me, that she missed me and that I was a really nice guy. I wish I could say that time flew by while I was in Chicago, but it didn't. I really didn't feel much better than I did before this whole revenge thing started. At least then I could see Carly walking by every day. I had to leave for several days, and it was nice to see the family. I took my sister Christmas shopping and bought something for everyone in my family. Carly expressed that she missed me and considered me a kind individual. It would be inaccurate to claim that the time I spent in Chicago passed quickly. It did not. My condition did not improve to any significant degree. I was not in a better state of mind than I had been prior to the commencement of the revenge incident. At least then, I had the opportunity to observe Carly's daily presence. I traveled to Michigan to visit my parents during the Thanksgiving holiday. I was obliged to remain absent for several days. It was beneficial to interact with my family. I accompanied my sister on a shopping excursion for Christmas gifts and procured items for each member of my family. I visited a jewelry store and purchased an engagement ring for Carrie, with the hope that she would accept my proposal at some point in the future. Following the Thanksgiving holiday, I returned to Chicago, where I anticipated remaining for approximately 3 weeks. I found myself preoccupied with feelings of solitude and isolation, despite the city's vibrant nightlife. The city lights, in particular, seemed to hold a special beauty, yet I felt a distinct lack of companionship. We, that is, myself and the new agents, had been instrumental in establishing the business from its infancy. Our efforts were bearing fruit, with numerous clients approaching us. It would be prudent to commence investment activities before the end of the year, when I returned to Ohio. My superior met me and commended me for the new company's achievements from a work perspective. Everything was going well. However, I was concerned about the state of my personal life. I called Sally Hawk as soon as I got back to my apartment, which was 2 days before Christmas. She was pleased to hear from me. She inquired about the business, and I informed her that everything had proceeded well. I inquired about Carly and the status of the divorce proceedings. She initially hesitated before disclosing that the divorce was finalized 2 days prior. I had previously requested Carly's contact information, but she asserted that she was not authorized to provide it. However, she agreed to contact Carly and inform her of my return to the area. I expressed my gratitude and she extended her best wishes. I was uncertain about how I should process this information. Carly was now divorced, and I was left with a sense of ambiguity regarding her thoughts and experiences during my absence in Chicago. I had the brilliant idea of going to our favorite restaurant, where we met for lunch every day. I went there in the hope of seeing her. My friend Marcia saw me and waved. I invited her to join me, perhaps I could learn a thing or two. Marcia began to tell me how nice it was to see me again. She had heard that I was opening a new agency for a company in Chicago. We chatted as usual and talked about the holidays that start tomorrow. She told me about her family and how well everything was going. I inquired as to whether Carrie was still employed by the company. Maria replied in the affirmative, but stated that she and her husband had recently divorced. She then proceeded to describe the circumstances surrounding the dissolution of their marriage, noting that it had occurred with surprising swiftness. She expressed concern that Carly might have experienced a significant degree of distress as a result, given her apparent lack of happiness. Maria further stated that Carly had chosen to refrain from pursuing romantic relationships and was instead devoting the majority of her time to work. Mara expressed sympathy for Carly's situation but emphasized that she was ultimately responsible for navigating it. She noted that Carly was still held in high regard by those around her and expressed hope that she would eventually find a partner who would make her happy. Mara suggested that Carly deserved better. Subsequently, I inquired with Mara as to whether Carrie was currently engaged in her professional duties. Mara informed me that Carrie was present, but had received a communication approximately an hour ago, prompting her to depart for the remainder of the afternoon. Mara stated that Carrie would not return until the following week, after Christmas. I extended seasonal greetings to Marcia and requested that she convey my regards to her family. I then proceeded to depart for my residence. The answering machine indicated no new messages. I began to experience a sense of despondency. I arose from my seat to answer the telephone, anticipating it might be Carly, but it was, in fact, another telemarketer seeking financial contributions. I abruptly returned the telephone to its cradle. I was aware that she would be contacting me regarding her investment. Upon reflection, however, I realized that this was unnecessary, as we had other agents available to provide updates. While I was away, my agents and I would share any new business that was assigned to my client base. I could call the office to ascertain whether any action had been taken on any of Carly's accounts. I promptly called the office, but the call went to voicemail. I observed that it was 5 o'clock, which was earlier than I had anticipated. The time was 12 p.m. It was a source of considerable frustration that the offices would be closed until Monday due to the holidays. I was left in the dark over the holiday weekend, as all offices were closed. My emotions were starting to become unhinged. I was left wondering whether I had it or whether I was about to lose it. I was in need of information. How was I supposed to survive this weekend without knowing anything? The phone rang again. I ran up to it and picked up the receiver. It was Sally, my lawyer. She called to let me know that she had received word that I had returned to Carrie. She also wanted to let me know that everything regarding the divorce was final. Jim could no longer file motions, he tried but lost them all. He had to cash out more than half of his retirement fund to pay his bank credit card charges. I informed Sally that she was a true friend and a valuable business associate. I thanked her for the information and extended my best wishes for the holiday season. There was a knock on the door, which I opened. I discovered that it was Mary, my neighbor, who had retrieved my mail and cleaned my apartment while I was away. I invited her in for a few minutes. She was a kind older woman who cleaned apartments to supplement her income. She usually cleaned mine about twice a week. She handed me my mail and gave me a tray of homemade cookies for the holidays. I asked her to wait a second because I had a gift for her too. I went in and gave her an envelope. With 3 crisp $100 bills for Christmas, she smiled and expressed her gratitude, then departed. It would be beneficial for society if there were more individuals like Mary. She was a joy to interact with. I was hungry, so I contacted the local pizzeria and ordered pizza. I requested that it be delivered, as I had no desire to venture out. I also asked them to purchase 12 cans of Miller Lite, which I needed for the evening. One advantage of residing in a small town is that I contacted hometown amenities, electing to view the latest news on television while awaiting the arrival of my pizza. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. I proceeded to retrieve my pizza from the delivery, whereupon Carly entered the residence with a broad smile. Tears welled up in my eyes, prompting me to exclaim. She inquired as to whether I was a pizza delivery person. I apologized for the confusion and informed her that I was not, in fact, a pizza delivery person. I then invited her into the living room and embraced her. I felt a sense of comfort and familiarity with her presence. I expressed my longing for her presence in my life and my disappointment at her absence. She was about to speak when the doorbell rang once more. I opened the door and it was the pizza delivery person with my beer and pizza. I paid him promptly and closed the door. I then turned back to Carly. "You are hungry," I said. "We have pizza and beer." I held both items in my hands as I spoke. Carly looked at me and was still smiling. "You know it is evident that I am in a somewhat peculiar situation." I was fully prepared for what I was going to say, and here I am, unable to think straight. "I need to tell you a couple of things, and then we can eat the pizza while it is still hot. I am aware that you dislike cold pizza. I am a big guy, and I miss you as well. In case you have not heard it yet, I recently discovered that you have returned. I apologize for leaving you a voicemail, it would have been in poor taste. I felt compelled to speak with you in person. I left work early after receiving a call from Sally, who informed me that you were home. I went out to purchase a gift for you, similar to what one might give at Christmas. You will see what it is. Once the meal is concluded, it is not a common occurrence for one to go to such lengths to purchase a dinner for another. Therefore, let us proceed with the consumption of the food." As I was procuring paper plates, I inquired about the nature of the gift. She responded with a smile that seemed to melt away any ice in her demeanor and stated, "Then you'll see." She then urged me to eat my pizza and pass her the beer, laughing. During the course of the meal, we discussed her work and its current status. I informed her about the agency we had recently established and provided her with the relevant details. We both avoided discussing any serious issues. After we had finished our pizza, Carly looked at me and asked if I was prepared for what I wanted. Now, I smiled and said yes. "Where is it?" Carly held up a small bag the size of a lunchbox. She vocalized from the bedroom, inquiring as to my readiness. I responded affirmatively, indicating that I was prepared. When she entered the room, she stated that she had procured a gift for me that day. I was permitted to unwrap it if I so desired. She was clad in a lacy red silk bra and lacy red silk bikini panties, and she even had a small red silk lace bow in her hair. She then informed me that she was no longer a married woman and that she would not engage in infidelity with any husband. She then suggested that we proceed to the bedroom to unwrap the gift. I was overwhelmed with emotion, as this was the woman I had desired for over a year. She then offered herself to me. I was speechless. I informed her that I would accept her proposal on one condition. I reached into my pocket and produced a ring. I then asked her to marry me. She began to cry and ran to me as I began to hug her. I could feel her soft, warm body. She screamed, "Yes, I will marry you. Yes, yes, yes. God, how I love you." I picked her up and carried her to my bedroom. I placed her on the bed. Which presented a beautiful and sexy sight. I removed my clothing, aware that this was to be our inaugural sexual encounter. I was confident that it would be a positive experience. I proceeded to kiss her neck with tenderness, aware that my subsequent actions would be gentle. As if making love to an angel, she raised her arms above her head as I began to kiss the valley between her breasts. She exuded a wonderful aroma, which she later identified as white diamonds. The exquisite scent was so compelling that I was overcome with the desire to consume her. However, I was determined to proceed with caution, so I continued to kiss her. I then proceeded to unclasp her lace silk bra, inhaling the heady aroma for just a second. I then slid one hand down to her flat stomach. She was so sexy that I could feel her suck in air every time I pressed on her stomach. As I continued to descend, I became aware of her feminine scent. Carly rose from the valley below, uttering a sound that could be described as a moan. However, I was able to discern her arousal through the subtle movements of her body. I then proceeded to stand up and gradually unwrap my gift. Once we had finished, she whispered, "Kevin, I love you." We then fell asleep, and it seemed that we had slept for quite some time. Upon awakening, we discovered that the house and room were entirely devoid of illumination. It had been a considerable length of time since I had awoken in the company of the woman I desired to be by my side. I was compelled to evacuate my bladder, and I was unable to delay any longer. While I was in the bathroom, Carly rose to her feet and proceeded to rummage through my dresser drawers, extracting a lengthy t-shirt. Carly donned the shirt, which had never looked so good. She proceeded to shower and freshen up while I placed the leftover pizza in the refrigerator. It is often observed that pizza tastes better when it is taken out of the oven. While we ate the pizza, we engaged in further conversation. I inquired about her plans for marriage. She responded that she would like to get married as soon as possible. She did not want to wait. It was approximately 10 p.m. I contacted Sally Hawk at her residence. She inquired as to the nature of the matter. I informed her that Carly and I were experiencing a problem and that I was seeking her assistance in resolving it, given her profession as a lawyer. She then asked for further details. I proceeded to explain that Carly and I wish to get married as soon as possible. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and we require the services of a judge to officiate our wedding. Do you know of anyone who might be available to assist us? Sally began to laugh, and Carly called you. Did she? I am pleased for you both. Please meet me at the courthouse tomorrow morning. We will obtain your marriage certificate and then proceed to my residence. You see, Mr. Hawk, my husband is a judge. I am aware of that fact. He will marry you. See you tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp, Carly, who was beautifully dressed, and I, who was dressed in a suit. We met Sally in the receptionist's office. We received our certificate and proceeded to Sally's house to get married. Her husband seemed like a decent enough guy for a judge. You never know what to expect from lawyers and judges. One might reasonably expect such a response from lawyers and judges, but we were confident that Sally was the best choice. Carly has few remaining relatives in the area, just a few distant cousins, so we decided to head to Michigan and surprise my family with my new wife. Their initial reaction was one of overwhelming joy and delight, which could be described as overjoyed or ecstatic. They all loved Carrie. It was evident that she was a valued member of the family. The Christmas festivities proved to be a memorable occasion, despite the subsequent need to return after the holiday. We were both gainfully employed and faced the challenge of relocating. We opted to reside in my apartment, which offered a convenient solution given her financial circumstances. We spent each day after work together, gradually acclimating to our new circumstances. We proceeded to transfer some of her belongings to my residence. It was a pleasurable experience to engage in numerous activities collectively. The female colleagues at her workplace expressed immense joy on her behalf. They asserted that the erstwhile Carly had returned. Mara exhibited a degree of astonishment upon learning that I was her newly appointed husband. She recalled my reputation as a formidable individual and a vindictive character. I distinctly recall Carly informing me, "Do not fret, Marcia. He is merely a puppy, and I hold him in high regard." The New Year's celebration was imminent, and nearly all the affluent businessmen from the vicinity were in attendance. I inquired of Carly, "My dear, do you wish to attend the New Year's party, our inaugural appearance together in the public eye? I wish to extol your virtues, and besides, even." Carly considered for a moment and then stated, "Kevin, I love you with all my heart and I want everyone to know it. Yes, we will attend the New Year's party, my dear husband." She then proceeded to dress in a manner befitting the occasion. Carly looked stunning. She wore a red blouse that matched perfectly with her lace bra and red silk panties. The combination of lace and silk did not make it much sexier. The blouse, however, has a particularly low neckline that reveals her voluminous breasts. She was wearing a black miniskirt with a lace hem, which she would have to be careful with, as her thigh was visible through the side slit. She was dressed to the point of being immodest, but in a positive way. Everyone wanted us to sit at their table, including my boss and his. Carly's friends, as well as the few friends I had, were present. Sally and Judge Hawk invited us to their table, which we accepted. I informed Sally that I had never observed a lawyer looking so well. She appeared to be quite impressive. We were introduced to the other individuals at their table, who were primarily judges and their wives. They appeared to be agreeable individuals. The music was audible, but on New Year's Eve, Carly and I engaged in a series of slow dances. Despite the presence of other men who attempted to dance with Carly, she consistently declined, stating that she only wished to dance with her husband. This year, we had the opportunity to be together. However, there was one exception. I danced with Sally, and Carly danced with the judge. These individuals held a special significance in our lives. As we danced, we found ourselves situated next to Karen, my former wife. My wife's sister and I were merely attempting to navigate the crowded dance floor when we nearly collided with Karen and her husband. She appeared startled and exclaimed, "Oh my God, it's Kevin." I acknowledged her with a polite greeting and extended an invitation to join us for the evening. I then introduced her to my wife, Carly, and her husband. He reached out to shake Carly's hand and introduced himself as Bob. Carly reciprocated with a warm smile and a polite greeting. She then turned to me and she inquired whether they had previously encountered one another at Robson's restaurant on Old Route 40, approximately 2 months prior. He responded in the negative, indicating that the establishment was not aligned with their financial preferences. She exhibited a sudden pallor and stated, "It was a pleasure meeting you. We must now return to our respective places." We were aware that she would inevitably inform Jim and Rachel of our presence. Upon observing their table, we noted that Rachel abruptly drained her drink upon learning of our arrival. We swiftly caught their attention, and we heard Rachel exclaim, "Oh my God, Jim. He's with your ex." Jim's wife nearly fell out of her chair in an attempt to turn and look. Karen then looked at Rachel and said, "Rachel," he introduced her as his wife. Jim responded by saying that the man was a son of a ___, and that they had been set up. They had been taken in for over $100. Additionally, they set us up to contract a sexually transmitted disease. How did they ascertain this information? Rachel stated that Kevin informed her that he would get even with us someday. Jim posited that perhaps we could attempt to take them back to court. Karen responded with laughter and advised them to cease. She noted that they were seated with Sally Hawk and half a dozen judges. Furthermore, Jim could engage in physical altercation with Kevin until the following day. It is evident that Kevin is a man of substance, and from the demeanor of his wife, she is a woman of equal fortitude. They would undoubtedly form a formidable couple. As the clock struck midnight, the crowd began to disperse. Sally and the judge bade us and the patrons at our table a fond farewell. After our next dance, Carly and I opted to sit in a nearby booth. Carly then excused herself to the restroom. Upon her return, she observed Jim and Rachel, who appeared to be regarding her and me with a discernible intensity. Carly then inquired as to my preparedness. I gazed at her and posed the question as to what she meant by prepared. She responded, "Ready for what?" I then inquired, "Ready for what, honey?" She replied, "No, Kevin. You're ready for your revenge." She then proceeded to insert her lacy red silk panties into my breast pocket, which was prominently displayed. This occurred in full view of Jim and Rachel. Subsequently, Karen and Bob engaged in sexual intercourse, which was audible to individuals at the adjacent table. She then proclaimed, "Happy New Year, darling," to which he responded, "Revenge isn't sweet, Happy New Year." He encouraged viewers to subscribe to the channel to prevent infidelity and proceeded to narrate the subsequent tale, which was markedly more intriguing than the preceding one. Individuals below the age of 18 were advised to refrain from listening to the subsequent story.